Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Jodi here, your Wednesday host for SelFTMade. Hope everyone's having a good week and a good summer. Summer's been busy and flying by with all the junk I've been doing over the summer, and then my day's been pretty good. It's been busy, and it's going to get busier this evening. I'm wearing my Zumba shirt that I cut off. If you haven't tried Zumba, you got to try it out. It's the best. Anyway, I'm going to jump into this week's topic, which is being trans at school and at work. We don't have to talk about both topics, but I think a lot of us probably will. And so I'm going to start with work because I think that that's a little bit simpler for me, and then kind of some advice on how I came out as trans in school. So here we go. So at my job, one of my bosses is my friend, and so she's known I've been trans for a couple of years now, no big deal. One of my other boss, didn't know or anything like that, and I don't think that I'm stealth, but I don't think that I'm not stealth at the same time. I'm just like, if people kind of figure it out and ask me about it, because I do a lot of stuff on social media about my transition, like on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, anything like that. So it's not like I'm really hiding, but I don't go around, shaking people's hands and telling them that I'm like, the trans person around where I work or anything like that, because I feel it's not important unless something goes on and I can have a very healthy discussion without outing myself, especially if I don't feel comfortable outing myself. And so anyway, so my boss, she added me on Facebook after, 6+ months of me working there. And kind of how I negotiated conversations beforehand was that she asked me about my middle name, and I just wasn't prepared to tell her my middle name and how it explained my whole transition to her. And so I just told her that I didn't have one. I said that my middle name was just the letter N. And she was like, okay, whatever. And then my 3 years on T came around, and she saw me post my side-by-side photos on Facebook. And so she goes, well, I saw this post, and I really don't get it, so can I ask you about it? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure, whatever. And so she asked me about my side-by-side. She goes, well, one says pre-T, and then one says 3 years on T, and I don't really know what that means. And so that's how I came out to her. I said, well, that's talking about me being on testosterone, and it's comparing how I look from 3 years ago till now. And so I explained everything to her. She's really cool, super big hippie lady, and so I wasn't ever really worried. Just to me, it wasn't important to tell her at work. And now everything's out in the open, no big deal. She doesn't care. She's never slipped up on pronouns or anything like that since coming out to her, and we just go about business as always, and we joke around and have a good time. Now, at school, it's been a little bit different. I go to the university that I got my bachelor's degree at, and then I started grad school there, and so I deal with a lot of the same professors. And so, one professor that's known me prior, to transitioning, and then now, she still messes up on pronouns every now and then. It's really interesting because I never actually really came out to her. I never really came out to anybody at school. And it was because, one, it's my life, it's my business, and I'm in a very liberal degree, and so I knew that everyone was either going to catch on or, a bunch of questions might happen or whatever. And so the one time that I had anyone ask me about my transition at school, well, it was twice. Two guys I go to school with we were peers and stuff like that. We were in the same cohort, and they were like, oh yeah, we totally get it. We know other trans people, no big deal. I'm like, all right, cool. And then one professor that I was working with closely noticed that this other professor was messing up on pronouns because she didn't know at the time, and so she asked me about it, and then she advocated that conversation for me and made these corrections and stuff like that. And the last 3 years has been really good, and stuff like that. And when this professor still messes up every now and then, it happens every once in a while, not as often as it probably did couple of years, 2-3 years ago. I just kind of laugh it off, and I go, it's no big deal, it happens, and you make the correction and you move on. Now, other people would take that differently and do things differently, but that's my advice. And my other advice is that if you're transitioning in school and you want to inform people of what's going on beforehand, I did write actually a letter out to my professors if they didn't really catch on, if the ones that knew me beforehand didn't really catch on or anything like that. And so, sending that through an email, unless like you're comfortable, setting like an appointment and sitting down and having that conversation. But it just really depends on you and your comfortability and where you're at with your transition and how close you are to these people. And I always default that if I'm not really working with these individuals and stuff like that, and they don't really know much about me, then I don't really care to tell them. And that's just me. That's how I am. That's how I approach it. Especially ones that knew me. Maybe I had 1 or 2 classes with them, 4 years ago, and then I see them randomly every so often, So it's no big deal. But if you have any other questions, comments, go ahead and leave them down below, and I will help you guys out as best as possible. Otherwise, I will see you guys next week. Peace.